Introductions have already been made. Me, Sophie, company, Cron, awesome, that's enough. It's not going to matter in a minute anyway. Because this talk is going to stink. Because I'm a rubbish speaker. My English is bad, and I don't even deserve to be here. Is what the tiny little monster in my ear keeps telling me. Despite all evidence to the contrary, because I have spoken at conferences and it has gone well, and I've been known to English, it's okay. But whatever I tell the monster, it keeps nagging. So what monster am I speaking of? Who here doesn't know what imposter syndrome is? Really? Okay. Thank you for coming anyway. So imposter syndrome is when you feel like a fraud, like an imposter about all your skills, your talents, your accomplishments, despite all evidence to the contrary, because you think there's external factors at play, like sheer dumb luck or the circumstances or something like that. And the result is often a very intense fear of being found out as a fraud. But there's one problem with the term imposter syndrome. And that is that there's a risk in the term that these awful feelings could be seen as a personal flaw of the people who suffer from them. And it's not at all. It's not your fault. There's often enough organizational, social, or cultural aspects to it, like a lack of proper onboarding procedures. So much for my English skills. Procedures can make you feel like a fraud in your job, or being the only one like you in your group in any aspect can make you feel like you don't belong there, so you must be a fraud. Does that sound familiar to any of the, let's say, female career changes in tech? Huh? Woo! Right? Other factors can be your upbringing, your family, racial identities, gender norms, perfectionism, depression, and anxiety. There's so many reasons, and none of them is just being silly. Now, I've told you in general what imposter syndrome is, so I'm going to give you an idea of what I feel like an imposter about. A, my Abitur, my high school diploma, holding a math diploma, being good at my job, calling myself a conference speaker. She says, speaking at a conference. Being sporty, having imposter syndrome, and also, super weirdly, being a cancer survivor. How does my brain manage to make that make sense? I have no idea. So apparently what I think is that in order to be proud of anything I have ever achieved is that I have to have worked really, really hard at it. Otherwise it doesn't count. But also I have to be naturally gifted and never work for anything. I have to do everything without any help. And I have to be absolutely and undeniably perfect. Otherwise, I can't say I can do something. More importantly than what I feel like an imposter about, let's look at how these feelings hold me back. One thing is that it's super hard for me to say, I achieved something or I can do something. Even when there's physical proof, like my diploma, which is basically a sheet of paper that says, this girl is smart, she can do math, and still I don't believe that. Which obviously leads to problems in situations like job interviews, performance reviews, salary negotiations, when I speak for the company I work for, when I have to tell potential new clients that I, as a representative of the company, am the best choice for the job, then that becomes a problem for others too. Sucks. But there's more than not being able to sing my own praise. For example, there's avoidance. I avoid situations where I might be judged or, as it feels to me, being found out by others. So sometimes at university, I didn't go to my exams. I also procrastinate super hard on studying for said exams, for certifications, or on writing conference proposals. Because if I don't even try, then nobody will find out how bad I am at it, right? Except it isn't, because when I then get by on panicked last-minute studying, I don't feel like I deserve the success. Sometimes I also over-prepare. I don't like asking for help. Even when I get sick, I don't think I'm sick enough to ask health professionals about my silly little worries. I miss out on a lot of fun stuff because I am scared when I try out new things, I will suck at them like a total beginner. You know? And I worry that I lose loved ones when they find out that I'm not actually a kind, funny or smart or friendly person, but a deeply less than mediocre pretender at everything. Does anyone here have similar experiences? Or maybe experiences for the last 2 teeth, which I have intentionally left blank? You can tell me in the discussion afterwards. But the good news is, I am here. So it seems that I did tell the program committee, invite me to speak here because I can speak. So like with a foreign language, it's hard to learn feeling confident and projecting confidence when you don't learn it when you're young, but it's still doable, as evidenced by me standing here. And here's a few tips for you. This one sounds totally counterintuitive because you feel like a fraud anyway, but faking confidence is allowed. Everybody does it. It's just play pretend for adults. Imagine my work meetings. I feel so bad sometimes about my command of the English language. I cringe when I make a mistake or when I struggle to find a word, or because I can't for the life of me pronounce the NTHS combo at the end of the word months. Because I want to sound like an English, like a native speaker, even though I'm not a native speaker. But several of my colleagues, not all of them, I spend a lot of time with other Germans in meetings where we speak English, because international teams and everything. And we as Germans aren't really known for our foreign language skills and tech people especially. So it gets really, really bad sometimes. But the consoling thought in all of this is that if you Google a job ad for a tech job in Germany, I guarantee you that it will ask for a high level of English language proficiency, probably even C1 or something. That means that those people with their very, very German English must have claimed to have it. And I hide my light under a bushel, even though I know the phrase to hide your light under a bushel. That's not fair. And that gave me the guts to at least try to sound confident, even if I didn't feel it. And I found out it works. Like I said, just play pretend. Now, the second tip I have is making self-advocacy a team sport. I guess most of you have experienced imposter syndrome, at least at one point. So you can see there's so many other people like you out there, even at your office. So team up with them. Either just by speaking about it, that alone helps, or I, for example, before I go into my yearly performance review, I have full-blown war councils with my colleagues. One of them reminds me of the things that I achieved during the year, and he lists all of them. The other one gives me strategy advice, and the third one straight up bullies me into asking for a bigger raise than I planned to. And when I go into the review, I can't let down the team. So I go with it, and it works. And when it's the next imposter's term for their review, we do the same for them. Okay, first breath in 10 minutes or so. So far, my tips have been loopholes, band-aids, just quick fixes. And they may or may not work for you when you tried to sound confident. But what about the less obvious consequences of feeling like a fraud? Like the self-sabotaging, the procrastinating, the continual fear of being found out as a fraud. I'm sorry, but we have to face the monster now. We can't keep going, I can't hear you, our entire life. It doesn't work. I remember when I first learned what imposter syndrome is. I had a big crying fest about how going from school and being like the typical overachiever at school without having to put in any effort to university, where I failed exams, hurt me. How bad that was, how bad that felt, how I felt like a fraud, how not even the exams that I had passed could convince me that I wasn't entirely lost. And then my sister, Laura, she told me, you know what, silly? The thoughts and feeling you're having, they have a name. It's called imposter syndrome, and many people, often high-achieving young women, have it. So when I finally learned what imposter syndrome is, I finally had a fighting chance. Because sometimes labels do help. If there's a label, a name for it, that means that it's so common that other people have bothered to give it a name, so there must be others like you. So you can talk about it, you can read about it, and you can learn about it. And learning all I could about it ultimately gave me the necessary tools to fight back against it. And maybe one day I will actually manage to win, but it's a work in progress. So my first tip is obviously, not my first, my third, whatever, is get to know the enemy. The fourth one is externalizing imposter thoughts. You may have noticed that I keep referring to imposter syndrome as the monster. And it's maybe a bit weird because it's my own thoughts and feelings, right? So why do I call it the monster? The technique is that I use so that I do it is externalizing these thoughts. Because if you tell them, if you externalize them, you can tell them to shut up because you're not chiding yourself, which would be counterproductive, but you're telling the monster to shut up, and that monster can catch a bubble. So while you're telling your imposter feelings to leave you alone, be kind to yourself. The key is self-compassion. Now, here's another truth about the monster. It means well, actually. Ultimately, it wants to keep you safe from being found out and thus being humiliated. Which is, admittedly, kind of nice, because nobody likes to be humiliated, right? But there's two fundamental flaws in its reasoning. One, you won't be humiliated because you can do the thing. And two, even if you can't, not being perfect at every single thing you do isn't humiliating. It's human nature. So let's try to make at least peace with the monster. I think the key to long-term living with the monster in your life is relearning a realistic image of competence and of success and of failure. Get a real good reality check on that. One thing us imposters all have in common is a very warped understanding of competence. I read a book called The Secret Thoughts of Successful Women by Valerie Young, I think her name is. And she identifies 5 competence types prevalent in those with imposter syndrome. The first is the perfectionists, who see nothing short of perfection as competence. There's the experts, who have to work and work and work and work and then amass all possible knowledge until they can see themselves as competent. There's the natural geniuses, who do the opposite. If they are not naturally gifted at something, then it's not for them. Then they can never be competent. There's the soloists, who think they have to achieve everything on their own without any help. And lastly, there's the superhuman type of imposter, who needs to be perfect in every single thing they do. Work, family life, sports, music, cooking, art, you name it, everything. And if you're wondering in which category I fall, all of the above. But in truth, there's a lot of power in the concept of good enough. Like finding 99% of the bugs is better than not doing any testing at all because you're not good at it anyway. And you can answer questions even if you're a beginner with something, and that will provide valuable insights for other people. You don't have to literally write the book on everything. And also, it can be incredibly freeing to accept something as good enough instead of obsessing about the last polishing for hours, not just in terms of time. Speaking of time, how am I doing? Ish? No. Okay, so what's success? We tend to overlook our successes. So I could ask you to either make a list of everything you've ever achieved in your life, like every trophy you ever won, every promotion, yada, yada, yada. It will be a long list. Another thing I do is making screenshots of nice things that people say about my talks, and I revisit the folder with them whenever I feel bad about my skills, my achievements. Because what I need to do is internalize my successes, just like I internalize the idea that I don't have them. And I'm certain one of these days it will work. I'm certain. But until then, I still have my fun to tide me over. Now, shocking message in the end, almost in the end, no human is perfect. Did you know that? We all make mistakes, we have flaws, we fail at things. The example that I used to use here is how I flunked my first driving exam. And if you want to, I can tell it over beer, because that's an epic fail if there was one. But I feel like recently I have a new example, like how I failed to check how much time I actually have for this talk. And then I had to really, really, really rush this talk and speak really fast. But the truth is, like the truism says, every failure is a learning opportunity. 20 minutes from now, Sophie will have learned two things. One, check your timing and double check your timing. And two, I can recover from mistakes. And even if it doesn't go perfectly, you probably won't drive me out of the room with pitchforks and torches. Probably won't happen, I assume. I think imposter syndrome is so prevalent in high achievers because we have never really learned a healthy perspective on success. So failing for us is actually a good thing because we learn that the sun will still rise after our first B-. I promise, will happen. We've now learned that you don't have to be perfect in order to call yourself competent and in order to be capable and successful. And we've also learned that making mistakes isn't the end of the world. The sum of the two equals, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. For me, that is the lesson it all boils down to. Imposter syndrome is nothing but a fear response. We hide behind a wall of perfectionism in order to not show our true selves with all our successes and accomplishments, but our flaws and failures too, to not open our up to scrutiny. But you know what you miss out on if you keep hiding? Everything. We're treating ourselves like like helicopter parents would, who don't allow their children to roller skate so they don't fall and hurt themselves. But I need 1 more minute. Is that okay? Yes, yes, yes. Because compared to the absolute joy of rolling down a hill with skates on your feet and wind in your hair, isn't a few skinned knees worth it? Because the same holds true for a life where you don't let yourself be held hostage by imposter feelings. Yes, you will be scrutinized. Yes, you will make mistakes. And yes, that will sting sometimes, but it will all be worth it when you stop stopping yourselves. When you accept challenges, take on opportunities and challenges as they come. When you let yourself shine. You're not a fraud. You deserve it all. It will be okay, I promise. Thank you so much for your attention, which has been 1 minute longer than I deserved. So double thank you for that.
As I told you, less time for questions.
Sorry.
Okay, no problem. If the sound technician has been prepared for that, can we hear a yodeling master at work? Are you up for that? No, you said no.
I didn't say no. I usually say you have to get me absolutely hammered for a presentation. So we'll see what tonight brings.
Yeah, okay. So stay with us for a few drinks. We'll see. I will check. Is there a difference between imposter syndrome and low self-esteem? If yes, what do you think the difference between the two?
There is. I think low self-esteem is easier to fix because you can learn a higher self-esteem, if it's only the low self-esteem, by succeeding, by seeing that you succeed. But with imposter syndrome, no matter how many successes you have, you always think, yeah, but that doesn't count because I studied so hard for it. Or you say, yeah, but that doesn't count because I didn't study at all for it, so it can't be hard. So whatever you do, imposter syndrome doesn't go away with evidence to the contrary.
Did you battle the monster on your own or with help of a professional, like a coach or psychologist?
Both. So I have had quite a few sessions with a shrink. I'm on the waiting list for more of them. Get help for your problems. Don't fail as I did. But I also self-taught myself about imposter syndrome because, funny story, my sister had to tell me what imposter syndrome is. My shrink didn't, even though I told her these feelings. She didn't say, girl, what you're having is imposter syndrome. I needed my sister to do that. And then I read books. Two that I can highly recommend is the one I mentioned earlier. It's The Secret Thoughts of Successful Women by Valerie Young. And the other one is The Imposter Cure. I forgot the author's name, but it's great too.
That sounds terrific. Do you have any practical tips? How do I build trust so that my developer colleagues involve me more as a junior tester?
Who is a career changer? Open communication. Tell them, hey, I want to be involved more. I may not have all the answers for the problems you're facing, but maybe I can ask the right questions. Tell them how they could benefit from talking you through what they are doing. Be honest that you want to learn, show interest, show enthusiasm. And most importantly, don't stop yourself from asking for that. Go for it.
That's great, thank you. Could it be possible that facing the imposter syndrome as a team sport might lead to a collective confirmation of your imposter thoughts?
I haven't experienced that. No, I've experienced quite the contrary because speaking with my friends about imposter syndrome has always given me a reality check. Even when it turns out that I'm not perfect at something, they will tell me, yeah, you're not perfect, but you're way better at this than 5 minutes ago, Sophie, so great job already. So it's, for me, always been a way out. Or through, at least.
Okay, let's see one more or two. You made an interesting observation that imposter syndrome is more common if you don't feel you work hard for something. Any further research on that?
It is not always more common. It is for me, but at the same time, I also get imposter syndrome when I feel I've worked so hard on something and it was so hard for me to achieve it. So it's both sides to the same story. And in the books that I read, the authors describe the same feeling in other people too. So I know it's not just me. Okay. It is okay for you that you speak here and now people think you are smart and it is your fault? What? Is it okay for you that you speak here and now people think you are smart and it is your fault? I think it's... have I not just shown you that I'm not smart at all? That I can't speak at conferences at all? No. The honest answer is I have not yet won against imposter syndrome, but I've learned to fight back against it, and accepting this as the compliment that I think it is a step forward for me. So thank you.
As a small token of appreciation, I wanted to give you this little heart. As I think you are not suffering imposter syndrome anymore, so you are cured.
You speak my love language.
Yeah. If you want to have one from this marzipan heart, actually, you need to find your emoji partner. So this is also.
I don't even have one.
Yeah, you go to the HTB and they will give you one, so you can fight.
That's how you do it.
Can find
I just begged for them earlier.
Yeah. So do so. Thanks a lot, Sophia, for this amazing presentation. I loved it, and I hope the audience did. So please evaluate Sophia's presentation,
yes,
and
please.
don't forget about that.
Tell me how shitty I did.
And another round of applause, please, for Sophia.
Thank you.